Hello, and welcome to this presentation about using Microsoft Excel for data analysis. This session has been created to guide NGOs on how to enter the raw data they collected in the field into a Microsoft Excel file, and then how to use this raw data to create some simple analysis and reports. This training will use some real-life examples of data entry and analysis that NGOs will experience when they are implementing education projects. India Literacy Project (ILP) has developed this training as a part of the ILP Knowledge Hub initiative. You can visit www.kh.ilpnet.org for more details about this initiative. In this video, I will be using a laptop with a Windows 7 operating system and Microsoft Excel 2010. If you are using a different Windows operating system or a different Microsoft Excel version, there may be some differences from what you will see in this video. Now, let us consider this example. Let us say that in May 2015, you as an NGO conducted a learning level assessment in mathematics. You conducted this for children in 5th and 8th standards. You assessed 8 children in each school for these 5th and 8th standards. You conducted this assessment in 10 schools in 10 different villages. 5 of these villages belong to one panchayat and 5 to another panchayat. You then evaluated all the answer sheets and provided grades to the children as A, B, C, D, E, and F. Now you're ready to enter this data into a file. So, what is the best way to enter this data in a Microsoft Excel file so that it becomes easy for you to analyze it once the data entry is completed? Let us open a Microsoft Excel file and learn how to do this. I have opened a new file that I have named Data Entry and Analysis 1. I will first name the worksheet in which I want to enter the raw data. I will double-click on this sheet here and rename it as Raw Data. We will enter raw data in this sheet. Next, we have to identify all the important data details that we want to enter. We will enter them as column headings. So let me start by entering the month and year of assessment. The village, school, class, subject, child name, and grade achieved. Now, think carefully if we have entered all the headings that we want. Did we enter too many or too less? For example, note that I did not enter panchayat. But what if I want to compare how one panchayat performed relative to the other panchayat? We cannot do it if we don't have panchayat as a column heading. So let me create an additional column and enter panchayat as a heading. We also entered subject as a heading. Do we really need it? We know that we are assessing only mathematics anyway, correct? But this is where designing your column titles carefully is very important. Today, you may be only assessing mathematics. But what if you wanted to assess English also very soon? Do you want to use a different data file? Or would you like to enter in the same file? So, it is important to remember, if you leave out a column heading, then it becomes hard to analyze the data later using that heading. Now let me select all the columns here and double click on any of these column names. A few other points to note. You will observe that I have not left any rows open on the top. I have also not left any columns in my data with no headings. If you are a basic Excel user, remember to always follow these two rules. Both these points help in creating the analysis in an easy way. Now that we have finalized our column headings, I can start entering the data. Let me start by entering data for 3 students. And I have to enter all the data like this. Let us now look at a file where I have entered all the data that we have collected. So when I entered all my data, this is how my file looks. Note that I have used some colors also so that we can view the data in an easy way. You can use whatever colors that you want to use. Now, once a large amount of data is entered like this, we can see that once I go down the rows, I can't see the column headings anymore. Let me show you how you can always be able to see the column headings. On the main menu, click on View. You will see the Freeze Panes area here. Click on the arrow and then choose Freeze Top Row. Now you will notice that even if I scroll down the rows, the headings are still visible. Now, all our data has been completely updated in this sheet. We are ready to begin our analysis steps. For doing this analysis, we will use a tool in Excel called the pivot table. I will select all the columns in which I have the data. Now note that I am selecting the columns by clicking on A, B, C column labels. I am not selecting by highlighting our column titles. This is a very important rule to follow. Then I will go to Insert and click the arrow on Pivot Table and select Pivot Table. You will see this window popped up. Here, the columns we selected earlier, A to H, are shown as selected. I can choose where I want to put this pivot table. I will select to put it in a new worksheet and click OK. You see that a new sheet has been created and we see a new pivot table. Let us rename this sheet as Analysis. Now click on this pivot table and go to the Pivot Table Tools on the menu and click on Design. Click Report Layout and select Show in Tabular Form. This will make your pivot table such that all your headings will be easy to read. You can do this at any time during the use of pivot tables. This is also a good rule to follow if you are a basic Excel user. Note that we also have a pivot table field list on the right side. We will use this to design our pivot table to answer many different questions we may have. This will be our analysis of the data. Let us say that we want to count how many children got what grades in our 10 schools. I will click and drag grade into the row labels here in the pivot table field list. You will notice that the grades automatically showed up in the pivot table on the worksheet. Now I will drag grade also into the values section. You will notice that the count of grades is showing automatically in the field list in the pivot table. So, with a few easy steps, we are now able to find out how many students achieved what grades. We can see that 21 students have achieved A, while 23 students have achieved F, and so on. So that was easy. It was a good start. But how can I take action based on this in the field? We want to analyze more. Let us define our next analysis. How are children in Panchayat 1 performing compared to those in Panchayat 2? To do this, I will click inside the pivot table again so that my pivot field list shows on the right side. Then I will drag Panchayat into the row labels and put it above the grade. Now in the pivot table, we are able to see how many students achieved what grades in each Panchayat. But this design of the pivot table looks a bit difficult to compare the Panchayats. Now I will make a simple change in the design of the pivot table so that it is easy to compare the two Panchayats. I will click and drag the Panchayat from the row labels section here to the column labels section here. Now you see a much better way in which you can compare the two Panchayats. It is very easy to see here that the children in the schools of Panchayat 2 got better grades than the children in Panchayat 1. Now, let's see if we want to add school names as well. I will click and drag the school names into the columns section label. Now we see grades achieved by each school also. But it is difficult to view. So again, let me change the design of the pivot table. I will drag panchayat and school to the row labels. And I will drag the grade to the column. As you can see, the data is much easier to see. Let us now have a different question. What if we want to find out what are the worst performing schools? For this, let me remove panchayat from the row labels. I can do this by dragging panchayat from the row labels back to the top here. Now, let us define schools into two categories. If the school had more children scoring A, B, or C grades than the number of children scoring D, E, and F grades, then we will call them good performing schools. The other schools will be called low performing schools. Remember, we have to think very carefully about how we define good and low performance schools. Excel will not do that for us. Excel pivot tables will only help us to analyze the data based on our definitions. Now, how do we get this in a pivot table? I will select the grades A, B, and C here. I will right click and say Group. This has combined these three grades and formed Group 1. I will click on this cell and rename the Group 1 as Good Performance. Similarly, I will select D, E, and F. And please note, I am selecting these on row 5 and not on row 4. Again, I will right click and say Group. As you can see, Group 2 is now formed. I will rename this as Low Performance. Now, you will also notice in the column labels of the pivot table field list that a grade 2 is formed. I will move out grade from the column labels. And you can see how the pivot table changes. So, by our definition, if a school has more students with A, B, and C grades, then it is a good school. I will first sort this pivot table by the good performance column. I will click my cursor here or anywhere in this column. Then I will go to Data and Sort by descending order. The sorting of the entire data is now done. The school names automatically got rearranged on the left. Now, all these schools have 9 or more students with good performance. So we can call these schools as good performance schools. The rest of the schools need to improve their performance. Now your project team can get a clear understanding of which schools to focus their efforts on. Now let us ask ourselves a different question. Of all the A grades received, what percentage of them were achieved in Panchayat 1 and what percentage in Panchayat 2? Let us see how we can do this. Let me use this same pivot table and show you. I will remove the grade 2 and school from the column labels and row labels. I will add Panchayat in the row labels and grade in the column labels. Now I will select this pivot table, right click, copy, and then paste it here. Now I will click anywhere in this pivot table. Right click and select Value Field Settings. In this window that has popped up, I will go to Show Value As and hit this arrow and select percentage of column total and select OK. You can see how the percentages have automatically showed up. 33% of A grades were received in Panchayat 1, while 67% were received in Panchayat 2, making it a total of 100% of the A grades. Since the numbers are small here, we can easily check that by doing a quick calculation. So 7 out of a total of 21 A grades means the Panchayat 1 has achieved 33% of A grades. Now let us ask another question. What percent of students in Panchayat 1 achieved A grade? In this pivot table on the right side, I will right click again, go to Value Field Settings, Show Value As, and select percentage of row total. Remember, we selected percentage of column total before. Now we are selecting percentage of row total and click OK. Now you will see that in Panchayat 1, 9% of the students achieved A grade. %, in Panchayat 2 achieved A grade and 13% overall. And you can find answers for any other grades like this. We can ask another question. Which class performed better, 5th or 8th? And by what percent was it better? Let me create a new pivot table by repeating the process I previously showed you. Now that we have created another pivot table in this worksheet analysis 2, we are ready to find our answer. I will drag class to the row labels, grade to values, and grade to the column labels. Just like we did before, I will group the grades and call them good performance and low performance. Now I will remove grade from the column labels. Now we notice that class 8 has done better, 44 versus 40 in good performance. But we have to answer one more question. By how much percent is class 8 better than class 5? To find this out, I will right-click on the pivot table, select Value Field Settings again, select Show Value As, and now we select percentage of grand total as the calculation. And I hit OK. So, of the 160 kids, 25% had a good performance in class 5 and 28% had a good performance in class 8. So, class 8 performed better than class 5 by 3%. I have showed you this analysis with a very small number of rows. But what if you are collecting information for hundreds and even many thousands of children? That is when you will find pivot tables very helpful to use. The important thing is to enter your data in the right way, as I have explained earlier. And as you keep using pivot tables more and more, you will realize that they are a powerful and easy to use tool for analyzing your data. Thank you for listening to this presentation. Hope you have found it helpful. You can visit our website www.kh.ilpnet.org for viewing more training videos and a wealth of information related to school education in India. Thank you.